Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning. It is my honor to meet with you. It is my honor to meet you again and to speak with you this morning.
It's a pleasure once again to see you.
And I'm sure I don't need to say, but I will, that Mexico is our closest neighbor, and we share a border, of course, but we also share the values of dignity and respect. We share the bonds of family and friendship, and we also share, of course, a long, deep, and complex history. We have put in the work, however, that I believe is required to build a productive partnership and to build on the work we have done in the past, and this partnership, I believe, couldn't be more important today. Our nations face serious challenges, COVID being an obvious one, economic repercussions coming from the COVID pandemic, as well as the surge of migrants arriving at our shared border. Together, we must fight violence. We must fight corruption and impunity. It is in our country's mutual interest to provide immediate relief to the Northern Triangle and to address the root causes of migration. You and I have discussed before an understanding and a belief most people don't want to leave home. And when they do, it is often because they are fleeing some harm or they are forced to leave because there's no opportunity in their home. And so this is in our mutual interest to address some of these root causes. And we must continue to do our work in a way that is both bilateral and multilateral. It is our intention, and it has been a guiding principle of us, that we are going to do this work in a way that internationalizes our approach, that reaches out to our allies, to our friends around the globe, in the mutual interest we all should have to address the root causes in the Northern Triangle. And our approach is a comprehensive strategy approach. Our approach is to work with international institutions, to work with nations worldwide, the private sector, and community organizations. And all of that being said, Mr. President, I believe there's one more thing that our nations share, and it is the belief that together we can make progress and we can create and build a sense of hope for the people of the Northern Triangle for the future. And so, Mr. President, again, it is my honor to meet with you, and I look forward to visiting with you in person in June. And with that, I thank you for joining us this morning. Good evening. First, I want to thank the jury for their service, and I want to thank Mr. Floyd's family for your steadfastness. Today, we feel a sigh of relief. Still, it cannot take away the pain. A measure of justice isn't the same as equal justice. This verdict brings us a step closer, and the fact is, we still have work to do. We still must reform the system. Last summer, together with Senator Cory Booker and Representative Karen Bass, I introduced the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. This bill would hold law enforcement accountable and help build trust between law enforcement and our communities. This bill is part of George Floyd's legacy. The President and I will continue to urge the Senate to pass this legislation, not as a panacea for every problem, but as a start. This work is long overdue. America has a long history of systemic racism. Black Americans, and Black men in particular, have been treated throughout the course of our history as less than human. Black men are fathers and brothers and sons and uncles and grandfathers and friends and neighbors. Their lives must be valued in our education system, in our healthcare system, in our housing system, in our economic system, in our criminal justice system, in our nation. Full stop. Because of smartphones, so many Americans have now seen the racial injustice that Black Americans have known for generations, the racial injustice that we have fought for generations, that my parents protested in the 1960s, that millions of us, Americans of every race, protested last summer. Here's the truth about racial injustice. It is not just a Black America problem or a people of color problem. It is a problem for every American. It is keeping us from fulfilling the promise of liberty and justice for all. And it is holding our nation back from realizing our full potential. We are all a part of George Floyd's legacy, and our job now is to honor it and to honor him. Thank you. And now it is my great honor to introduce the President of the United States, Joe Biden. This is about our democracy and one of the most important pillars of our democracy, which is whether or not we are going to make it more difficult, as is happening in many states, or protect and make it easier for people to vote. That's what's at stake right now, and it is a shame that nearly every Republican in the United States Senate refused to even allow a debate on this issue. But the American Jobs Plan is about saying we are going to invest in America's future. And I'll tell you guys, Maggie and Jean knows this, and all of us know this, any member of Congress. We get information, some of it classified, some of it you read it in the paper, about how, a question about whether we are keeping or losing our competitive edge as a nation. And we need to pay attention to that. And we have to pay attention to it, yes, in the context of national security, but let's look at it also just in the context of what I like to call American aspiration. The very nature of who we are is we know how to aspire, to see things that can be regardless of what has been. And in our greatest moments, we have then invested in that vision, where we agree we are not going to be incremental in our approach. We're not going to say, oh yeah, we'll take it slow, one day at a time. No, we say, let's be big. And when we set the bar high, the very nature of American aspiration is such that we always jump for it, and we do it. We said we were going to go to the moon, and then we planted a flag there. That's who we are. So the American Jobs Plan, some people will say, oh, that's a really ambitious plan. That's a lot. Well, sometimes it takes a lot of courage, a lot of vision, a lot of faith in the American people. Yeah, that's a lot to do the things that reflect who we are and have been as a nation in our greatest moments. And so that's what the American Jobs Plan is about. And it is about, yes, roads and bridges and thinking about what families and working people need to get to work. But it's also about an investment in our future in terms of what we need to do to actually be competitive, to create jobs and rise to this moment in the history of our country. And so that's where we are, and it's very exciting. We've come off of, and we're still in it, but we see a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of all that this pandemic has wrought in terms of the loss of life and jobs and normalcy. And this, I believe, is one of those things, this push to invest in America's future, that is going to give people a great sense of hope about what is possible and to remind people about what is possible. Again, when we set the bar high because we know we are capable of reaching it. I believe that when the history of the 21st century is written, much of it will be centered right here in the Indo-Pacific. Our intention is to strengthen our partnerships and reinforce our shared vision so that the United States, with our partners, can together continue shaping that history. In doing so, there should be no doubt, we have enduring interests in this region, and we have enduring commitments as well. Those commitments include, of course, security. Yesterday, I visited Changi Naval Base. The U.S. Navy ship, the USS Tulsa, is docked there right now, a symbol of a deep and enduring security partnership between our nations, a statement of America's security commitment to this region. Our vision includes freedom of navigation, which is vital to us all. The livelihood of millions of people depend on the billions of dollars in trade that flow through these sea lanes each day. And yet, in the South China Sea, we know that Beijing continues to coerce, to intimidate, and to make claims to the vast majority of the South China Sea. These unlawful claims have been rejected by the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal decision. And Beijing's actions continue to undermine the rules-based order and threaten the sovereignty of nations. The United States stands with our allies and partners in the face of these threats. And I must be clear, our engagement in Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific is not against any one country, nor is it designed to make anyone choose between countries. Instead, our engagement is about advancing an optimistic vision that we have for our participation and partnership in this region. And our economic vision is a critical part of that. The economy of the United States is growing faster than it has in nearly 40 years. Wages are up, employment is up, consumer demand is up. And we believe that our growth should not stop at the water's edge, that it can also, and it will also, benefit our partners. And our economy shares so much with Southeast Asia, from supply chains to a steady flow of two-way trade. Collectively, the nations of Southeast Asia represent our nation's fourth largest export market, a vibrant and dynamic market, which will soon rank among the biggest markets in the world. Our trade relationships in Southeast Asia support more than 600,000 American jobs. And now, with an eye toward the future, we are strengthening our economic engagement. Sadly, what we know is that the two components of the right to vote, one to cast your ballot and the other to make sure your ballot is counted, are under threat right now. We saw that poll workers, it talked about leading up to the 2020 election, the most recent big national election, began to receive threats, forcing some to have to work around the clock, getting protection, around-the-clock protection. Others were threatened and were afraid to go back to their homes because they were actually threatened to such an extent that they felt unsafe to be in their personal homes. And many of these threats came from folks who were, as we turned out, unhappy with the outcome of the election. And however, what we do know, and it is an undisputed fact by those who know and are informed and possess the facts, that the 2020 election was administered under the highest standards and nonpartisan standards. So what we want to do today is have a discussion about how we can ensure as we go forward that the American people have a fair, a transparent, accessible opportunity to exercise their voice through their vote. And as it relates to the work of our administration, we are very proud that we are really treating this with one of our highest levels of priority. Anything from what the DOJ is doing over there around a task force to protect election officials and poll workers. 4 months ago, our administration and the president issued orders that include the order to increase voter access, including encouraging people to become nonpartisan poll workers. And we are working to stop anti-voter legislation in the various states. We are forcefully working to pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and working to help ensure that all Americans know what they get when they vote, to further encourage them to vote knowing that it will make a difference in their lives. So today, I look forward to our conversation. Again, I want to thank each of you. You represent thousands of people who live in all of our communities, regardless of how we voted in the last election or may vote in the next election, who really are the best of civic participants and patriots. So thank you all for your work, and I look forward to our conversation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Acting Secretary Thomas Harker, General David Berger, Admiral Mike Gilday. Looking out at these midshipmen, I know we are all filled with pride. Vice Admiral Sean Buck, Captain T.R. Buchanan, faculty and staff, thank you for educating such a fine crew. Alumni, thank you for the support you have shown over these years to this great institution. And to my military aide, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Macniak, who graduated in 2004, I'm very proud to have you with me here today. Family and friends of these graduates, thank you for the sacrifices you have already made and will make. And I also want to acknowledge Kim and John Johnson. Your son was taken far too soon, and I promise you that he will not be forgotten. And finally, to the class of 2021, congratulations. Congratulations. And look how far you've come. So you endured 0530 PT and Prono exams. You excelled on athletic fields and in academic exercises. You enjoyed the fair at Dillo's. I know. Karaoke at Harvest. You guys rolled up your sleeves and you got vaccinated and you made it to this day. You made it to this day.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Jennifer Jacobs at Bloomberg.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Hold on to it. Ma'am, the U.S. is experiencing record inflation, the worst in 30 years, way beyond expectations. OPEC didn't increase oil production. Can you tell us a little bit about how you would prevent the new spending and your Build Back Better agenda from exacerbating the problem? And also, what else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
All right, thank you. Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. That's about a source of stress for families that is not only economic, but is on a daily level, something that is a heavy weight to carry. So it is something that we take very seriously, very seriously. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously. And it is a priority, therefore. So we have addressed it in a number of ways. One of the issues that we know is related to this is the supply chain issue that we just discussed. And so on a domestic level, in terms of domestic policy, one of the approaches we have taken is to work with labor unions and to work with municipalities in opening back up and extending the hours of our ports. There are actually 3 I have in mind: Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Savannah. And in fact, part of the infrastructure bill benefit is most recently what we will do to assist Savannah in broadening their ability to be an active port. And we have seen a reduction in the container ships off of the Long Beach and LA ports because of what we have done, which is to extend, as you know, to extend the hours to now 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But there is also a point that is important to make on the Build Back Better framework. One, it is designed to make it less expensive for working people to live. It was specifically designed to bring down the costs of childcare and increase accessibility and availability. Designed to bring down the cost of elder care and make it available to all those working families that need that support and need that help. And Build Back Better is not going to cost anything. We're paying for it. So when we can get Build Back Better passed, and we are optimistic that we will, the American people will see costs actually reduced around some of the most essential services that they need to take care of their basic responsibilities, including issues like child care and elder care, and also preschool. And that's an important point to mention also. And in fact, I had some conversations here in France, including with the Minister of Education in France, about the, again, global impact of the pandemic on child care, but also on education, and in particular for our youngest children. Universal pre-K, when we're able to do that, 3 and 4 years old, getting education at no cost, what that is going to do in terms of not only supporting working families who otherwise can't afford to put their kids in a private situation and otherwise don't have it available, that's going to have a huge impact on lowering the cost for families. So that is a big part of our agenda, and I think it's important to also stress that it's not going to cost anything for the American taxpayer.